go live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to AKNS Virtual Majlis. Today, we're going to be talking about connecting people through art. This is the school's Virtual Majlis. I cannot believe it this far. Can you believe 5 Virtual Majlises? Please welcome the schools that are participating in this event. GEMS Founders School Dubai, the Winchester School, GEMS New Millennium School, our own English High School Sharjah, GEMS Cambridge International School, and GEMS Modern Academy. Please rise for the national anthem of the United Arab Emirates. Please welcome our speakers from GEMS Founders School. Adia Shah.
Good morning. I am Arya Shah from Year 12. I am very happy to be part of this virtual Majlis because I believe art is my way to express our pent up emotions through pencil, colors, and paper. I am very pumped for this discussion because I'm surrounded by people equally passionate about art as I am. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anastasia Onoseva, and I'm from Year 11 at GEMS Founders School. I'm really passionate about art, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to push the barriers of knowledge and to share my experience with you guys and learn from you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Ilya Abdul Karim. I'm from GEMS Founders and I'm in Year 11. I'm currently a GCSE art student and I'm here because I'm very passionate about art and I'm interested in looking at everyone else's views and seeing how it compares or challenges my own. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Atya and I'm an A-level fine arts student at GEMS Founders. The reason I'm here to attend this Majlis today is because I have a great interest and passion in all things art and the influence it has on our everyday life. Thank you.
Thank you, Adia. Please welcome our speakers from our own English high school. Josh Desai.
Hello guys, my name is Josh Desai and I'm in class 11 of our English high school. I believe that art plays a major role in connecting people around us and I'm very excited for this discussion and get to know the views of the other people around me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jashan Shelvi and I'm grade 11 student of our own English High School Boys Brand Sharjah. It would be a great opportunity for me to express my opinions on the topic connecting people through art and also to listen everyone's opinions as well. Moreover, art is one of my favorite subjects. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Please welcome our speakers from GEMS Modern Academy. Sandhya Iyer.
Hello, my name is Sandhya Iyer and I'm an IB1 in GEMS Modern Academy. And art has always been something I've been very passionate about and it's been a big part of my life. I'm excited to share my thoughts and views on this topic and also hear my peers' thoughts and views. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marti Damania and I'm from IB1 in GEMS Modern Academy. And I really love art and I'm looking forward to seeing what other people's views are on how art can connect people. Thank you.
Thank you, Arti. Please welcome our speakers from GEMS New Millennium School. Meera Dinu.
Hello, I'm Meera Dinu. I'm from grade 10 from GEMS New Millennium School. I love art and I'm very excited to have a fruitful conversation with like-minded and talented individuals today.
Good morning. My name is Abhinandan Naresh and I study in grade 10. I've loved art for a very long time and that's why I'm very happy to be here. And I hope to have a great discussion on how art actually relates to real life. Thank you.
Sananya Talwar.
Hello guys. My name is Sanya Talwar from 12th class from GEMS New Millennium School. I joined this because it is a very interesting topic and there's still so much things to know and learn through this because I believe learning never stops. That's why I'm joining this video on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanya. Please welcome our speaker from the Winchester School, Mahati Suresh.
Hello everybody, my name is Mahati Suresh and I'm very happy to be part of the AKNS Virtual Majlis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahati. And please welcome our speaker from GEMS Cambridge International School, Parvati Arun.
Hello everyone, my name is Parvati Arun and I am in year 6 in GEMS Cambridge International School. I'm very happy to be a part of this virtual majlis to help everybody understand that art is also a part of reality.
Thank you, Parva. And please welcome our speakers from GEMS Al Khalij National School, Dia Has Nizam.
Good morning. My name is Dia Hasnizam. Art is one of the most important things in my life, so I'm very happy to be a part of this majlis, and I'm excited to hear the thoughts of everyone about art. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judy from Al Khalij National School. I'm in the 9th grade and I'm very excited to participate in this majlis because I can't wait to see and hear everyone's perspective on art and what it means in their life.
Leah. Leah.
Hi everyone, I'm Leah and I'm from grade 11. I'm honored to be here today and talk about something that I'm passionate about and love. I believe that art enables us to find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. I hope that everyone's going to enjoy our skin and see our passion for art. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Behnaz.
Hi, I'm Behnaz. I'm a junior in AKNS, and art is something I'm passionate about, and it's what describes me. So for that reason, I've decided to join this majlis to share my opinion and get other people's opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Behnaz. And lastly, me. Hello, everybody. My name is Taline Fadi, and I'm from grade 7. It's my honor to be here. I would love to thank Ms. Khulud and all the other participants for participating in this event. And yeah. And please welcome our guest, Ms. Madeline Abunaba, Learning Coordinator at Jameel Arts Center. Ms. Madeline is a graduate from the American University in Dubai with a Bachelor of Business Administration and a concentration in management. Her passion for art drove her to pursue her master's in History of Art and Museum Studies at Paris Sorbonne University from Paris Sorbonne University Abu Dhabi. She had experience working and interning in the art industry between galleries and museums in the UAE and France. She worked with the Louvre Paris, Louvre Abu Dhabi, and now she is the learning coordinator at Art Jameel Museum.
Hello, everyone. It's quite an honor to be here. Thank you very much, Ms. Khulud, for inviting me. I'm very excited to see everyone's views on art and for me to be involved with everyone as well and to see some challenging questions that you all have for me and maybe for me to also pose some challenging questions. So it should be a very, very interesting discussion. I'm very happy to see all of you and to see such great passion for the arts. Thank you very much. So just to be clear, am I supposed to, would you like me to start speaking now, or is there going to be someone before me that will start speaking?
Ms. Madeline, I think I cannot see your camera. Your camera is open, but just the background is showing.
Oh, okay,
You're not showing in the background.
Let me see. Can you see me now?
Yes, much better.
All right, perfect. All right. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify if you would like me to proceed and speak first, or are there previous speakers before me?
So basically, we're going to start with the first question, and we're also going to direct some questions to you from the students and from us. And so we'll start with the first question for today, and it is, what is art? Like, why are we specifically talking about art?
All right. Well, for me, as you grow up, you have this certain idea about what art is supposed to be. You think that, excuse me, just 1 second. Apologies, everyone, I have a cold. So, as you grow up, you think that art is supposed to be just about paintings or just about sculptures or just something that's considered what we used to call the traditional arts. But the older you get, you start to see that that's something that is very, very different. I remember the first time that I went to a museum was when I graduated school and my parents took me to Paris, and it was the first time I see a museum. And I saw this beautiful painting called The Burial of Atala. And the way, and I had my earphones, and the person that was describing the painting, it was absolutely beautiful, absolutely wonderful. And it pointed out things that I would not have understood unless someone had explained it to me. And that's when I realized that there's so much more to art than what we see sometimes. And of course, after that, I went to intern at the Third Line Gallery, which is the oldest gallery in the UAE. And what they had there was contemporary art. So that's when I started to understand what contemporary art was. That was prior to me getting a degree in History of Art and Museum Studies. So then I started to understand that art is not just simply about having a painting or having a sculpture or a sketch. It could be something very, very different. Basically, that started to become more apparent to me after I worked at the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum, because basically when I worked at the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum, it is called an international museum. It's an international museum and a historic museum as well. So what does that mean? It means that most of the artworks and the objects there were from the Old Stone Age all the way to the 21st century. And it was a historical museum, meaning that it covered the entire world. You had artworks and objects and antiquities from all over the world, and I stayed with them for 3 years. So it gave me a very interesting view on how the concept of art would evolve from one period to another. So it was very much tied into the time period and what was happening at the time, and a lot of different things like that. So just excuse me one second.
It's all right, Miss Madeline. What you said is basically
Yes.
like a brief summary about how like you started to get introduced to art in museums.
There
Now
you
you're
go.
working at museums and you have a degree in them.
Yeah.
Anastasia, would you like to add?
Yes, exactly. So like Miss said, everyone may have different perceptions of art. And for me, when I get asked a question, what is art for me? Art may come in different forms, but in reality, it is an intangible idea or a concept that is used to break our barriers and perceptions that we might put on ourselves or on others. So George Bernard Shaw once said that you use a glass mirror to see your face, and you use works of art to see your soul. And I really do believe that art evokes emotions and raises questions that you might have never thought of before. And when you search for the answers within yourself and with the outside world, you understand that art is much deeper and more meaningful than you might have perceived it to be. And so you open up a conversation, a connection with the artist and with the art and with your inner self. So for me, art is a connection, a communication, an expression, and an emotion. I'd like to give this idea to Ilya. Maybe she can expand on that further. Ilya, if you would like to share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so basically the question, what is art? I feel like this question doesn't have an answer. Art is such a subjective expression form to the point where it is so personalized to each and every person who does it. You can put pen to paper and call it art, and someone else could sing song lyrics and call it art. Another person could make a dress and call it art. What you give your piece meaning is what art is to you and what you call your art. So we can't, when you would ask like any random person what is art, most people would say, oh, it's a painting on a canvas. But that's not what art is. And that's why I think we should be discussing this topic more, because the way art connects us all is way deeper than we realize, and we need to start discussing it more, because the more we discuss it, the more we are aware of the deep history and context that surrounds art and the way that we all incorporate it into our lives. Thank you. Would Mahathi like to add on to anything I said?
Yes, sure. So for me, actually, art is a creative activity that expresses imaginative or even your emotions and your feelings, and it expresses like many things, whatever you think as well. And for me, art is connected in our daily lives without us knowing or unknowingly, because all the things we do is like it's is a form of art. Like when you talk or when you speak, everything is a form of art. Now, if I'm speaking, even that's a form of art. Drawing is a form of art, and many more. Thank you. And I would like to ask Sandhya to continue.
Yes. Yeah. I just like to say that art is like a whole experience. It's an all-around thing. It can be used to, keep people's express emotions. That's what one of the things that I feel it's really great at, because not everyone can express themselves using their words or using their actions, or they cannot communicate their ideas and thoughts using words. And I think art is such a unique tool that you don't necessarily have to use words. You can just express your emotions and all your thoughts and ideas through this medium. And that's why I think it's even such a great medium to connect people. Would Mira like to go next?
Yeah, I have a question for Miss Madeline. After working in a museum for this long, I'm pretty sure you've encountered some people that are probably like, how is art connecting us? You know, the artist has a certain perception of what they've painted, but other people can misinterpret it. So in that context, how would you explain to them?
So the way when we worked at the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum, because it was an international museum, there was one thing that we needed to understand was that nothing was separate from another. So what I mean by that is even when we started to look at things before it was even considered art, so before there was even art, when there was just symbols or cave drawings or anything like that. So we started to think about it historically. Originally, before it was just cave drawings because it wasn't meant for art. They didn't understand that, they didn't mean for it to be art. It was just cavemen drawing things inside of caves because they would visualize themselves hunting something and they would see, if I can see it here, then that means that I'm going to hunt this bison or whatever in reality, or whatever the animal was. So then it was a tribal thing, so that I would remember that this was my cave so that no one else can come into it. So it was a survival thing. And then as you move on in time, you could see how it was used as a form of communication. So even language and symbols, the way that they started to do them in Mesopotamia, when you have cuneiform, this was not so much, it was symbols that were drawn, but then it evolved into a language. So it became a form of communication. And that allowed people to trade and to communicate, and allowed them to introduce themselves to other cultures. And then you move forward in time and you start to see that it was, for example, for the Greeks, it was a form of storytelling. It was a form of them telling you about their gods and the things that were happening with them. So a lot of times it was either about historical documentation at the beginning of time, or it was communication. But then as we evolve, especially, you start to see that art for a specific period of time was actually very much inside of a box. It was called traditional art. And so it was only paintings, and there were several layers of painting. So you're not allowed, for example, to paint a certain thing unless the academy in France told you you're allowed to paint it. So for example, you're only allowed to paint kings and queens, and then portraits, and then still life, which was at the bottom of the chain. And so there was a lot of restrictions on what art was, but it was still a form of communication, because if you have a portrait, if you're doing a portrait of, let's say, a king, a lot of symbols would be there to communicate to the public, his strength. So for example, there was a painting of Louis XIV, and it was kind of in a form of a triangle. And what that resembled, because a triangle, if you put it on a flat base, it means that there is stability, it doesn't wobble. So what he was trying to say to his people, the way that it was painted in a way where the structure, or the form was in a triangle, that he's saying that, when I'm king, there's stability. So you see how a lot of times, even before, it was used to communicate messages, whether it was sometimes messages to the people through their kings. Some kings would put paintings next to their thrones, so that when they meet, their allies, they would come and they would see a painting of, for example, of someone being killed because he betrayed a king. So it's kind of like a sign of warning, So when they come and meet him and they see this painting, he's trying to tell them something, which is like, don't betray me, or else this is the thing that this is the fate that you might see. So a lot of times that was kind of how it was when we're talking about, for example, when we're talking about 16th, 17th century. And then as you move forward, especially after the Industrial Revolution, you started to see that people became very independent. They started to break away from what's considered traditional, and they wanted to communicate about their personal life, their everyday life. And that's when you had the Impressionists, for example. They started to talk about whatever they see, the first impressions that they look at, whether it was the sun, whether it was the clouds, whether it was, a lot of things like that. And don't forget that with the Industrial Revolution, it means that there were trains. So a lot of people were able to move from one country to another quite fast. So you had all these different views of different opinions coming from all around the world that started to change their perspective of what they considered to be art as well. So then we go into what I usually face of how is this considered art, which is the 21st century. So a lot of times I see, and even in the late 20th century, when you have Cubism, for example, minimalism, so a lot of times people would come to me and they would be like, how is this even art? If you look at Mondrian's paintings and they're just squares, and they look at me and they're like, how is this considered art? Why is this art? But I want you to know that especially now in the 21st century, the way that we consider art, the way that I consider art, is anything can be art. Literally anything. As long as it means something to someone, it is something that is trying to tell you something, that it has some form of message behind it. It has a concept, even if the concept is the lack of concept. I don't know if you've ever heard of a movement called Dada. Dada was literally a movement that involved artworks that meant nothing, that meant absolutely nothing. Dada, even the name itself, is nothing. It means nothing. But a lot of people tried to overanalyze it and they tried to find meaning, but there was no meaning. They were just actually trying to create very random objects that had no meaning. But that was the meaning behind their work, is that it had no meaning. So you see, art can be very, very interesting because you can really view it in many different ways. It can have so many different meanings. I mean, for a while it was a competition of, what can you do that has not been done before? So let's say Jackson Pollock. So now you come and you throw paint on a painting and you say, well, Jackson Pollock did it. Why was he considered famous, but I'm not considered famous? I'm doing the same thing. So the trick is, he thought about it when no one did before, and that was abstract expressionism. But now that you do it, someone else did it before you. So that's an idea that's already existent. So it does help us communicate a lot because it also helps you understand what was happening during that time. So that's the point that I wanted to get to. So a lot of time you understand that, well, these paintings started to happen with Picasso's period when he has a lot of women in his paintings that look like they have tribal object expressions. So that was because a lot of times in France and in England, they brought a lot of objects from a lot of areas that they colonized. So you could see a lot of tribal objects. So when they arrived to France, they started to become inspired by these tribal objects and they started to paint them because they were very mesmerized. They're creating all of these beautiful masks that were not meant to be art, that were meant to either give them rain or for ritual reasons or something like that. So this is also a form of communication because it helps us understand the differences between cultures and the way that we view art. So to some people, they could create something very beautiful, but it's not art, like tribes. It was just for them to create something for them to survive, you know what I mean? But then when it arrived to France, they saw it as artworks. They called it primitive art. We no longer call it that, of course. But to them, because they didn't understand, how could you create something so beautiful, but it's not an artwork, because they never viewed it as art. Do you have any questions for me as I'm talking? By the way, please feel free to interrupt me and ask me questions as well.
Yes, Miss. I really agree with your point on what contemporary art is, or art in general is. It started as a form of communication before we could speak or create a language. An example would be hieroglyphics from Egypt. That was a form of communication from early on. As you said, cavemen used to draw on the walls and depict things such as how to hunt, maybe, what tools they used to use. They noted all of that down, and it initially started as a form of communication of what they see, and it eventually developed. And as you said, past the industrial stage, it started becoming something that was related to the trends of the world. So as you said, the kings and queens, that was the trends because it made them look, it made them look big, made them look powerful. That's why kings and queens used paintings to express that to the future generation. And as you said, in 2021, anything can be considered art. Any form, as people were adding on, could be considered art because people these days have so much to talk about, and art is the easiest way to communicate. It catches your eye. You don't have to wait and stop and listen. You just have to look and then figure out what is the message I'm trying to portray. I could be sitting next to someone who wants to portray their religion, heritage, or culture, while someone like me who's a teenager who experiences, the teenage life, I talk about social issues in my artwork because that's what I'm passionate about. And, I completely agree with you on, how art basically constantly moves and shifts depending on the trends that are happening of the current age or what is currently going on. And we can always trace back in art and figure out, okay, in the caveman period this happened, the kings and queens wanted this, that's why they used art as a tool. the industrial age, everything started to, art started to expand more than just a form of communication. So I think it's really amazing, and I completely agree with you on the fact that, of what you said and the points you made. I just want to bring on someone I know who uses art. I'm Indian, and for Indians, art is a really big thing in expressing culture and religion, because we're quite religious in that way. And I'd like to call on my fellow peer Arya, who wants to talk about how, because she uses her culture and heritage to express her forms of art, whereas I use social issues. So I don't really use my cultural heritage, but Arya does. So I would love if Arya talked about it and told you and maybe discussed with you back and forth. Thank you, Miss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adya, for calling on me. I would like to say that art and creativity has always been a part of Indian culture and of our global heritage as well. Growing up in India, I have seen a lot of art pieces and creativity everywhere I go. In the build of wedding sets, in the intricacies of the architecture, in the rituals, in the traditions, in the morning prayers, just everything includes a lot of creativity. This influence really adds to my understanding of art, because my artistic skills are not just restricted to art with pencil on paper, but it extends to curating something that is filled with creativity through and through. Um, I would also like to extend a question to Judy. How is your culture related to art? Like, I would like to know a lot about the other cultures and how art is influenced in that way.
Yeah, I'm Egyptian, so we also learned a lot about the pyramids and how people a long time ago used to communicate by sculpting on the walls inside of the pyramids, showing how their lifestyle was a long time ago. And when people looked at these drawings years later, thousands of years later, we started to get a clearer image of how people lived a long time ago, even though their art wasn't very detailed. It was very simple, but yet people, when they looked at it, they also got an image of how people used to live at the time. Also, adding on to what Adia said, I feel like art is a way of expression. So we also had this period in time where there was white on white canvases where all an artist did was paint a canvas white with white, yet won almost $15 million on it. It didn't mean anything, even though the canvas was white the same way it came, but people looked at it differently. They felt this painting had a meaning, and so they left it the way it is because it's very, I mean, like, as long as an art has an expression behind it, it doesn't matter what's drawn on it or what's, like, the emotion behind it. And I would like to pass it on to Arati.
So, as Judy mentioned about how it's just about how other people interpret it, I also want to say how sometimes people can use art, at least it's more relevant these days. People are using art more for addressing social issues and things like that. So that's one of the major things. You'd see how many art competitions are there about and raising awareness about posters, about environments and things like that. People make art, one is definitely connected to their culture, especially if you care a lot about something, you would want to start doing something about it. You would want to express those feelings in your art. That's something that I do, except for me, I do it more for my stories and what emotions I have. I do it like that. And so regarding with that, I wanted to just mention that it's not just about culture. Art can not only do for emotions, culture, it can also do for things that you want to tell other people, like beliefs and things like that. I think Sandhya would like to go next. So.
Yes, I totally agree with Arti's point. Recently, it has been used to touch on. Yes, I totally agree with Arti's point. Recently, it has been used to, bring out social issues, global issues. And I'd also like to ask a question. As we know, art can be perceived in many different ways. And we spoke about how art was a means of communication and how an artwork would communicate to people certain ideas or what the painter was feeling. But I also think that art connects people in a different way, being that people have so many different perspectives. So many people look at the same artwork and they'll have different ideas of what the artist may have been thinking or what the artist may be trying to portray. So do you think, I mean, I feel like this is a great way for people to interact and, share their thoughts and ideas. And this could be a great source of discussion. So do you think this is a good thing, or do you think it's better that, people stick to what the artist was actually trying to say? Because personally, I do feel that it's a good thing that, people get to discuss or around the topic of the artwork.
So would someone like to answer that, or would you like me to, was that question directed towards me, or would you like, if some of the students have some answers about that, I would actually love to hear your perspective first, and then maybe I can give you some of mine.
Yes, could you answer so we could just kind of maybe question you on what
you're answering? Sure, of course. So to me, the way that I view it is, it's actually, I think that it could be both ways. So meaning that sometimes it is very, very great that, you can see it and you relate to it just from your own culture, because it can connect to you on an emotional level. But it's also very interesting when you see how something that's not from your culture, you relate to it just by something that you see from your own culture. So I'll give you a very good example. When I was working at the Louvre Abu Dhabi, we had a statue from Mesopotamia for Gudea, and Gudea was a prince, and he would be standing like this. So that was a statue. So for a lot of cultures, maybe for a lot of religions, they might not know this gesture. All right. And of course, to each religion, we have a different form of prayer. But for example, for the Muslim community, this was a very, very understandable gesture. So for example, when I had an audience that was with an Islamic background, and I would ask them, what do you think he's doing? They would be like, oh, he's praying. So they would get it immediately because they would see that. And of course, Gudea was not, he was not of an Islamic religion. It was just a form of meditation. All right. And because he was not only a king, he was also a priest. They were priests and kings at the same time. But that was a form of humbleness and meditation. But for example, for a lot of other people, they didn't see it as praying. They would say meditating, they wouldn't connect it to praying. But it was very interesting to see how different cultures and different views would put different labels on things that they would see. So for example, people with the Islamic culture, they would say, oh, he's praying. But from different cultures, they would say, oh, he's meditating, or he's focusing, or he's trying to put an order. This is the way that he stands. So I definitely think that, having different perspectives and having people from different backgrounds look at an artwork that's not necessarily from their own background or from their own culture can be a bad thing. Of course, it's always very interesting because it also teaches you how there's a lot of similarities between cultures, not only differences, but there's also a lot of similarities between them. And and that's very, very true, because a lot of times what is also very important to understand is when we're looking throughout history, we need not to forget that people traveled from one area to another. When you have Alexander the Great, and he went through so many countries, he influenced a lot of other areas with the arts that he was doing, and so he brought his own cultural art into, for example, India. So you'd see a Buddha, represented in a Roman way, but it wasn't the traditional way that they would represent it in India. But because they had influence from Alexander the Great, they started doing Buddha in a Roman statue style, in a Romanesque statue style. So that's what's very interesting. So you can see how you find similarities and you find differences, but there's always something that connects us to each other. And I think that that's very interesting. So that's why I'm saying sometimes they go hand in hand. You can see something different, and that's what makes you understand how it is different, and then it makes you find a connection, and then sometimes you just find a connection and it makes you relate to your own culture even more when you see something that resembles. So when you were talking about hieroglyphics earlier, for example, you see, in Mesopotamia, it was 3200 BCE. It came out in the same time, hieroglyphics and cuneiform, they came out in the same time period. So it's very interesting because they were very different in the way that they wrote their language, even though there was trade, by the way. But it's very interesting to see that. And by the way, like, then later on, you know, they had influence from other areas around the world, from other cultures, even with hieroglyphics. So it's interesting to see how everything is interlinked, I would say. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes, miss.
I want to ask you then, do you think that it is a good thing that people see culture from different perspectives, or do you think that there are negative aspects to it? Do you think that if you show a certain culture something that's very different from what they recognize, do you think that there are downsides, and do you think there are upsides, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, I would like to answer that question which Miss Madeline has told. I really think that you can't really, differentiate it in that way. There obviously will be upsides as well as downsides because, each of us have a mind of our own and, we will interpret what we see in our own way. But regardless, we should not really discriminate someone based on that. It's obviously our own interpretation, and as an individual, I believe that we should all respect each other's point of view, other than discriminating or telling that yes, you are wrong. Because there's one really famous image of a 9 and a 6. A person standing on one side sees it as a 9, and on the other side sees it as a 6, and then each of them are telling that no, you are wrong, this is a 9, no, you are wrong, this is a 6. But what we know is that both of them are correct. The way you see it is different from the way we see it. So yeah, this is what I really wanted to say.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's very true. I think someone else had answers as well, so please feel free to give me your answers.
Yeah, I would like to add on. So yeah, I like Josh said, respect is very important when you're viewing another culture, as each culture is unique and their art is a representation of their ideologies. And even if your culture's ideologies are different, you should make sure to respect them and to see them in the same light as you see your own culture. And only through this can art and the different cultures of the world actually come together and contribute to each other and help each other grow.
That's a very, very interesting point of view. Yes, I totally agree. Because, before in history, everyone learned from everyone and everyone influenced everyone. There was no culture that was completely isolated and evolved completely in isolation by itself. Every culture that we know of had interactions with other cultures and evolved through the influence of other cultures and evolved its art through influences of other cultures. And till this day, we're still doing the same thing. So I would say that there isn't one culture that has never been affected, whether artistically or culturally, by another culture. This never existed in history, and that's what's very fascinating. Any more answers? Or if you have any more questions, please feel free.
I think Anas has an answer for you.
Yeah,
Anas, can you please come onto the mic?
I actually wanted to ask a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I was thinking there's this problem about what other people think about art. They think art is an easy thing. They keep telling me, like, for example, I want to study art as a future studies, and they keep telling me when you go study art in university, but there's not going to be any work for you, or it's not going to be good for you. Like, you're not going to get paid for it, you can't find jobs or easy things. And if we've noticed, we've actually more artists, and so many artists artwork have been found and noticed after their death, and that's something that's really I've
understand.
really seen it. And what do you think about it, Miss? Like,
if there's one thing that I can tell
what do you think,
honestly, yeah,
getting the person who wants to get a job or wants to study, do you have any tip for them, any advices?
Of course I do. So I studied for my bachelor's degree business management, And that was something that I did not relate to at all. But at the time, I was in your place. So I want you to know that at some point, I still feel like I'm still in school, and I understand completely where you're coming from and the confusion that you're coming from, because I was a student too, and I used to draw on my desk all the time and get yelled at for drawing on my desk and then having to erase it because I would have so many drawings and I wasn't allowed to do that. But I was very passionate about art, and I am an artist myself. But I got scared because culturally here, it's still a new concept. When I wanted to study art, I had my parents and a lot of different people in society telling me, what are you going to do with a degree of art? And I've had someone in a very high position in a company once tell me, when I told them that I wanted to pursue a degree in history of art and museum studies, they actually told me a very harsh thing. They said, well, what are you going to do with that degree? Are you going to sell falafel? And I, at that time, I was like, whoa, is it viewed as, that useless? But let me tell you something. I believed in my heart, and I believed that it was something that I was very, very passionate about and something that I loved. And you always do what you love, because in business, there are people that are very passionate about business. In architecture, there are people that are very passionate about architecture. In science and in medicine, there are people that are very passionate about that too. So don't enter something that you're not very passionate about, because know that there are others also with you that are very passionate about, and they might have better opportunities just because that is their passion. So if your passion is art and you believe in it, why wouldn't you succeed just as many others have succeeded, because they had the passion too. And this only proved me right, because when I followed my passion, that's when I found myself growing in my career. That's when I found myself, doing what I love and growing in what I love, because I'm very, very passionate about it. I'm very passionate about talking about this point with you all. And there are so many things, so many jobs that you can find in arts and culture, other than just being a painter or an artist or a sculptor or whatever it is that you want to be. So not just an artist. I did another presentation a while ago, which is called You're Finding a Path in Arts and Culture. And it's about talking about how many different departments we have in a museum and in a gallery. You have someone you have curators who organize an exhibition. You have those who take care of the artwork. So you have people that do conservation. You have the installation team. You have the events team. You have the learning team, which is me. So you have so many ways that you can be involved in art, and not just by being an artist, but you can also be an artist if that is what you're very passionate about. And if it is something you truly believe in, and you truly believe that you have something that you want to say that's not been spoken about, that's not been considered before, then go for it. But on a realistic point of view too, arts and culture is very much about
I'm sorry, miss. We are unable to hear you. Could you just check your internet connection, miss Madeline?
Seems like I also have the same thing. I thought it was only a technical issue from my side, but I cannot hear Miss Madeline. I think some of you guys had some questions to direct to each other. So whoever wants to ask a question, Elia wanted to ask a question, so you can go ahead until Miss Madeline fixes her technical issue.
So I wanted to talk on culture. So I'm personally Arab, and in Arab culture, there's a huge stigma with art. For example, if you told someone you were going to study art, they would they would pester you with questions, and they would tell you, oh, why aren't you going to medicine? Why aren't you going to engineering? Art is not going to get you anywhere. And I feel like this stigma really rubbed off on me because I was so passionate about art last year, and I was planning on doing something related to art. But because the stigma rubbed on me, I started straying away from that and going away from what I was passionate about. And I was looking into more scientific careers, and I was convincing myself that I could do it. But in reality, I wasn't passionate about it. And as I did more research, I figured out that there are so many careers that combine science and art, or math and art, that will get you so far in life. And you just need to be able to look at these things and look past what people tell you and do what you want, because at the end of the day, these people aren't the people who are going to be in your shoes when you are studying. They're not going to be the people working. So I think it's very important to talk about this, because people need to be aware that there are careers that exist in art that aren't like useless. For example, getting an art career can get you to so many places if you work hard enough and if you're passionate enough. And we need to talk about this more, and we need to start normalizing that art isn't a bad career option to go into. I had a question. I wanted to ask if anyone had any experiences with being like told that they shouldn't be going into art because it's not a stable career, or that they should pursue a more stable career. Adia, would you like to add on?
Yes. Also, I'm from an Indian ethnic background, and even though in India art is a really big thing, it's still a career that's seen in society as something that is extremely easy to go into. And it's, if you fail in school, you do art. And I think I'm really thankful to my parents because they definitely brought me up really well, and they encouraged me to do art, and I'm going to start pursuing fine arts quite soon. And I think that's amazing. And people always talk about art being the failure of every subject, but in reality, if you think about it, art is actually the hardest because it's something that can't be taught. You need the skills, you need the drive to do it. You can learn maths, you can learn English, you can learn many different things, but you can't learn art. You can't learn, it's really hard to teach someone else. When I'm trying to teach maybe a junior in my school or people in my class, it's very hard to teach them and tell them what to do, because I can say, draw an apple, and you could draw a square with a red and a little leaf and say, yeah, that's my apple. So I think that's a wonderful question, and it's something that our speaker was talking about, Miss Madeline, that art can be anything and everything. And so just to add on, people want to speak up. There are multiple people who actually want to add on to what I'm saying and add on to Elia's question. So if people like Anastasia, I know you wanted to come up and ask, and also people like Dia afterwards, if you want to come up and add on, could you please do so?
Apologies, everyone. Just my connection cut off. So sorry to interrupt you, but I'm back here if just to let you all know. All right, go on, please.
Yeah. Just to further develop this idea of being not good enough, of people telling you're not good enough, we've seen a historical trend in art that women were marginalized often, and we've seen that during the recent studies that have shown with the New York Times, only 11% of works in museums are done by women. And so my question is, do you think that according to the feminist views, according to marginalization and discrimination, do you think of that move?
Anastasia, I think you're having an internet issue because your voice was very laggy when you were asking your question.
Anastasia, would you mind sending it on the chat?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
yeah, I'll
Anastasia,
send
we
it
can hear
in
you now.
chat, and that's no
Yeah.
problem.
No, we can hear you. I think if you turn off your camera, maybe we can hear you. The connection would be stronger.
Okay, I'll just okay. So to back up that point that we've just raised of not being good enough, of people telling you're not good enough, do you think that given this social trend for discrimination, marginalization that we fight against, do you think that art is, as an industry, that is a victim to that marginalization? Because I've seen that during the recent New York Times study that only 11% of museum artworks are done by women. And I believe that's because they were conventionally seen as inferior to man, as restricted to only cooking and looking after children. And I really wanted to ask you guys, all of you, if you believe that it is a problem that we should fight against, and if so, how do we do that?
Dia, would you like to answer?
Yes. Yeah, art has been used for quite a long time to raise awareness for issues like promoting equal rights. Like, for example, in the AIDS pandemic in America, women would knit a certain type of art to raise awareness and provide clothing for people who were affected by the AIDS pandemic. Sandhya, could you elaborate?
Yes, I feel like art, when women would do it, like, so for instance, women would knit, women would paint, women would sew, but all these things were just activities that they do for their entertainment at home, since they weren't really, at that time, they weren't really allowed to go out or do their own thing. So even though they had all this spare time and they would create wonderful masterpieces, these pieces wouldn't really be shown or exposed as artworks or shown to the public, but rather they were just recreational activities for them to do at home, since they weren't really allowed to do anything else. And I think that it's funny because even though men had so many other things to do, like they were allowed to go for their jobs, they could do all these things, yet their artworks were still, shown to the public. Their artworks were, given more public importance and stuff like that. So would anyone like to add to this discussion?
Jackson, I know you might have an experience in this. Would you like to collaborate on that?
Yes, sure. Yeah. So basically, like, to be honest, till grade 10, I don't have any interest in learning art and as well to draw or making craft work as well, because I usually be a nerd at that time. Only my aim was to score good marks in competitive exams and the board exams as well. So at that time, I don't take part in any various sort of programs or like discussion type of programs similar to this Majlis as well. Teachers may have called me to take part in the competition, but I usually say no, I don't want to take part. I just want to study. I just want to study every time. So, but then last year in grade 11, something has changed. My English teacher has motivated me. Her name is Mrs. Radhika. So she has encouraged me to take part in various programs. She has called me in Zoom meetings various times, tried to tell me the necessity of taking part in programs and discussions where we ourselves can express our opinions rather than keep on studying. And because of that, she has, like selected me as a part of the member of Generation Global Club as a global ambassador, where I can speak to various schools and express my opinions and write as of now today also. And she was the driving force which behind me to take part in this majlis as well. Actually, I said no, but then she told take part. She encouraged me a lot of times, and she made me myself to take part in this competition. So what I meant to say that through this experience, I understood the value of art of discussion and truly understood the necessity of art in my life. And I myself need to thank her. Like after this program, I want to thank her. That's my basic small experience.
That's amazing, Jackson. I think you kind of speak up for all of those people who go through a lot of, they really hold themselves back because of their culture or what their position is or what their gender is. I've seen many male leads in my life, tell me, art is for girls, boys can't do art. Art is restricted to this and this age. If you do art after the age of this, you can't, it's not counted as a job. And I think, yeah, your culture, your gender, society in general really restricts art. So I'd like to ask a question to anyone and everyone, and of course, I'd love to hear Miss Madeline's answer too. Have you ever experienced or seen another person in your life ever being held back and being told not to do art because of, something as ridiculous as their gender or, their ethnicity or their ability as an artist? Because I think that's also not often talked about. People who are not naturally good at art but can progress really well are often held back. So I'd like to ask people, Behinaz, Miss Madeline, any questions or anything they want to add on about this and, about Jackson's experience, or any guy over here who wants to add on to Jackson's experience and agree with him.
I would like to hear the point of view of the students with their hands up first, and then I'll just add my point later.
Sandia, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, firstly, for me, I have an older cousin sister who is pursuing art, and she's doing interior design right now. And although there wasn't exactly any restriction to her doing it, there was definitely, people were definitely skeptical about how it would work out, and how her future would turn out. Would she be able to fend for herself and stuff like that? And I think, but I mean, it's all worked out now. She has a stable job, and I'm really grateful for that. And she was actually one of my main inspirations to, pursue art, because before I was only thinking of doing it as a hobby, but she was one of the main people who, urged me to follow my passion and, actually take up art as a career in the future, possibly. And I think that a great platform that's come about where, art and art in all its forms has really been appreciated, is the app TikTok that I think everybody knows about. And I feel like everybody shares their creativity there. They share their dances, they share their music, they share their artworks. And I think it's great because people can talk to each other about, maybe collaborating on something. They learn from each other. And people also use, like content creators, they also use, interesting ways on this platform to spread, like we spoke about before, like spread, information about topics like global issues and such other topics, which I think is great because for us as a generation, it makes us interested in learning about these things and also, be aware about these things. So that's what I'd like.
Thank you, Sandia. And Sania, would you like to add to what Sandia said?
Yes, I want to react what Elia said, that parents are like saying to take a stable job. So see, according to my opinion, what I will do is that I will take a stable job also, and then I will do multitask. I will use art also as my talent. You can create like amazing contents. You can make your Instagram page, and then you can put all your drawings. So you can manage both. You may even make even more money also. So that's what I will do. So you can try that area.
I'd like to say something. Elia had brought up this point, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but she had brought up this point about how if you take art, you don't get very far in life. I have a question, Elia, what do you mean by get very far in life? Like, is it other people's perception of what is far, or is it your perception? Because as long as you're satisfied with what you're doing, you're getting far in life. Like, there is no other question that you need to answer. You like, I'm pretty sure Miss Madeline also brought this up. You have to satisfy what you want to do. If you're passionate about something, go for it. Like, nobody else's opinion matters.
Can I answer?
Yeah,
Okay.
go.
So I meant that people used, like, I used to hear people saying, oh, if you take art, you're not going to go far in life. And I was saying that that stigma rubbed off on me to the point where I started considering taking art as a hobby rather than like actually pursuing it as a job. So personally, my parents always encouraged me to take a more creative path because they knew I was like that and that I was more passionate about stuff like that. But because the Arab community and culture is generally so like focused on having a stable career, I started going towards that path and I was thinking of just taking art as a hobby. But then I realized that art is my passion and I wouldn't be satisfied if I didn't have a job where I could create or design something. So I believe that you can get far with taking art, but I'm saying that other people used to say that you don't get far in life when you take art. So just to clarify.
I really completely agree with you, Ilya, on that and whatever you just said. I'd just like to quickly add on, even when people accept art, they accept art in certain forms. I know my dad wanted me to do something related to the business side of art. So he wanted me to take things like interior designing and illustration so that I could gain money. So yes, I did get um, get accepted into my parents were okay with me doing art, but but they wanted me to do a certain type of art, and that's what I want to really ask you guys. Do you think you could do art based on what someone asks you to do or on your passions? And I'd like to direct this question and start it with Josh, because I know he's from a similar background as me. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever experienced your parents telling you, if you're going to take art, take the art path that has the most money or the most potential for business in it? So Josh, can you please start us off, and then anyone can add on?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Adya, for passing on the mic to me. And yeah, that is true. But I really would like to repeat the stigma what Ilya had told that in Indian culture, people really think that if you fail, if you're bad at studies, just take arts because that's comparing easier. Yeah, but I really disagree with that. Telling what Mira had told, that as far as you are doing what you want to do within you, you're happy, and that's the farthest you can reach in life. Like I really like, I won't say arts, but I really like to dance, and I have given a speech, a TED speech on dance, on how dance can improve your lifestyle and how dance influences our life. And I am pretty happy with what I do, and that's what I believe that should be. As far as I'm happy, what others think shouldn't really matter. So that's the farthest what a person can get in life, is what I believe in. If anyone wants to disagree to it, so.
I feel like this kind of just showcases how we all have similar experiences. Technically, just connecting, we connect with each other, connecting people through art related to experiences of art. And I would also like to mention that since we live in the UAE, I know that Judy has a lot of points to add about Islamic art because of the fact that we live in the UAE. So I would like to pass the mic on to Judy for this.
Yes, I completely agree with what you're saying, but I thought this should also be an important mention in our conversation because the UAE is a Muslim country, and I feel like wherever you go, like there's no way you're gonna possibly see Islamic art, like the mosques, the walls, the calligraphy that people put in the bridges where people pass by in the mosque. I feel like this also plays a very important role, that art is also like connected to religions, and it shows our differences, but not in a way where it's aggressive or people can get into a fight. It's a very peaceful way of talking about like different aspects of the world and everything that we have to connect to each other. We have like Arabic calligraphy, the art that is engraved in the mosques, in the walls, and it also plays like a long role back in history as well. Islamic art is one of the oldest types of art. I felt like that was very important to mention.
Just so if we're talking about the oldest, I had a question for all of you guys. Since the audience doesn't differentiate between the physical art and the experience of seeing art, do you believe that the digitalized world that we are living in right now should go alongside or in parallel to with the art? Should we digitalize art and gallery experiences, or should we keep it very traditional and sacred? Anyone, if you could answer that question, that would be great.
I'd actually like to add on to your question, Anastasia. I'd actually like to ask Miss Madeline, because she says she does art history, and for her, the art from back in time it's something that she studied. So it would be really interesting to ask her about digitalized art and her views on it, and maybe anybody else. I want to ask it as an open question after Miss Madeline. Do you prefer digital or physical art, or art that's on a canvas?
I'm going to be honest with you. I have no preference. If I feel like there is an art piece that I connect to, I connect to. Whether it is an antiquity, an antique thing that I studied about, or a painting, or a sculpture, or something that I just saw. Currently at Jameel Art Center, we have an exhibition that talks a lot about digital art and how, digitalizing a lot of things has, changed us, and especially when we're talking about Gen Z. How you guys are very involved in technology, and we're talking about TikTok and everything like that. So I think, this is part of our lives, and it's not something separate from our lives. So we can't see that it is something separate. It is part of our culture now. It is part of our world. It is part of our day-to-day life. So it's not something that's completely separate from us. You can choose to leave it out of your art and your creation of art, but to say that it is not existent in our life would be something that's completely impossible. But at the same time, I could say, if there is something that I connect to, if there is something that I feel like I relate to, then I like it. Whether it is something new, whether it is something digital, whether it is something old, it really doesn't have to be one specific thing. I have so many different paintings and so many different artworks and objects that I like from many different artistic periods. So I have actually no preference. And I think, that might be the same with all of you. A lot of times, if you see something that you relate to it, or it reminds you of something, or it really makes you think about a concept that's very interesting, that could be something that you really like. I think that, considering that we are also in an age where we're very open with internet, and we read a lot about the past and the current, and we can kind of predict about a lot of things that are going to happen also in the future with technology and so on. We're so open to so many different things that we can like a lot of different things. I just wanted to add one point before we move forward, because I think it's very important when we're talking about earlier about having women work in the art industry. Personally, working at the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum, I can tell you the majority was women. My entire department was women. Jameel Art Center, mostly women. So, and women are very, they're very good at what they do, and no one dares to undermine women nowadays. And I would say that, everyone should know better than to think that a woman wouldn't know better, or a woman can't do something as well as a man, or maybe even better. It's all about equality. Men can do things in a great way, and so can women. No gender is greater than the other. We're both just as great. We're both just as capable. And if you hear any comments, which you will, I won't lie to you because I'm trying to speak to you in a realistic way, you will face sometimes in life situations where you might face sexism, where you might hear a colleague overtalk what you're saying because you're a woman, or try to, I don't know if you understand the statement, mansplain what you're trying to say. I have faced a lot of these situations, but believe in yourself and stay strong, and it's okay. You will encounter these things, but it's not a flaw that's in you. Know that that's a flaw in the person, and that they should know better. They should know better, because we are in the 21st century. We're 2021. We should be way past this. And I wanted to give you examples because I want you also to look into them. There was an artist called Angela Kaufman. And Angela Kaufman was not women. I don't know if you know this. Women before, in Renaissance and even after, even in 16th, 17th, 18th century, were not allowed to paint except for still life. This is all you were allowed to paint. The academy would not allow them to paint higher degrees of paintings. If you're a woman, you're only allowed to paint this. Yeah, and you can research it. But Angela Kaufman used to do amazing portraits, and portraits were a very high standard considered in the academy. And she ended up actually opening, being one of the first founding members of the Royal Academy in London in 1766. So you can see how in history women have been fighting, and sadly, you will face these things. You know, we want to believe that this does not exist anymore because we are in 2021, but it does still exist. But know that that flaw is not because you're a woman or because you didn't know any better. That flaw is simply from the other party, and you can even face it from women themselves, telling you, "Oh no, that's a man's thing. That's a man's job." Man would say better. It has nothing to do with that, really. That's a fault with themselves, and that's not a fault within us. We know that both men and women are just as equally brilliant and just as equally strong. Another example from the 20th century, you had Berthe Morisot, who is actually the wife. I don't know if you know an artist called Manet, not Monet, Manet. He was also an impressionist. And he was trying to convince her so hard to be called an impressionist, to join the impressionist group. And she kept telling him, no, I don't want to, because first of all, you're my husband and you're already getting a lot of light shed on you. I don't want to be known as the wife of an impressionist or to have light shed on me as part of an impressionist group, because my name won't come up because I'm a woman. And she decided to go in her own path so that she would make her name for herself, even though she was an impressionist. And I can tell you, she was better than a lot of other male impressionists of her time as well. But sadly, in history, she wasn't very much spoken about, but we understand now that she had a lot of great techniques and so on and so forth. So what I wanted to say is that, yes, it does exist, and yes, you will face it, but toughen up and believe in yourself, and know that if you ever face it, that's not a flaw that's in you. Don't ever doubt yourself that you don't know better because someone told you that, you know, it's not so much appropriate for a woman, or it's not this, or there's no more talk of that. You know, we're in the 21st century, you can do anything you want to do, literally anything. And I mean literally anything you can do. It's both appropriate for men and women. Yes, Taline, I see your hand raised.
Yes, since I'm here, I have a question for you guys. It's actually for Parvati, because since we're talking about digital art, so some people have different opinions. So some people say that digital art is a type of art and it is very important because at the end it's called art. But some people say that digital art is not as hard as normal art because they think that when you're holding the iPad or the laptop and then you're drawing, you don't have to fill out all the gaps and fill out all the spaces in color. You can just tap and the whole thing is done. So some people think that, but other people think that digital art is hard. So since Parvati has some experience with digital art, would you like to answer my question?
Yes, so as digital art, you can't compare it with normal art because that's just amazing, that paint and all that experience you have. But in digital art, there are many features like if you make a mistake to go back or to correct the shape. But I think that I do digital art a lot, but I can't compare it with real art. Real art is just amazing because yes, there are many features, but if you're making a mistake in real art, that's part of art. You connect that mistake and make it into a masterpiece. So, but that doesn't give you can't do that on digital art.
I would like to just add on to what Parvati is saying. As someone who initially used to do traditional art a lot and then moved on to digital art, I'd say that both of them are equally as tough. But there's also the thing that in both digital art and in traditional art, there's same things also that connect to it. You still have to know the basics of everything and to be able to transfer it. It's only that the medium that you're using is just different. For traditional art, I used to do a lot of watercolors, and it was really hard for me to fix it up later when I moved on to digital art because of how hard it was to just blend it easily. Sometimes I feel like when I'm coloring in digital, it would be better if I did this traditionally, but then other times I think, oh my god, it's so much better using digital. And I think it's just two different mediums, and it's just you have to just try to make your best of both worlds. And I anybody else would like to move on to that? Just
I would just like to say that you cannot say that digital art is not real art, because anything you create, anything you perform, anything you do is art. Like you cannot say that digital, just because it's digital, just because you're doing it on an iPad or on a laptop, it doesn't make it not real, because that includes effort too. You are taking out your time to try and create something that is going to have a piece of you embedded in it. You are creating something that is going to remain there forever. Like, yes, that's just what I wanted to say.
And I'd like to add on, I think that art is real art. We should consider it as real art. And as we discussed in the beginning of this live event, that art is anything that has meaning in it. So, when you add when you emotionally invest in an artwork that's digital, that can be considered art. I think Judy would like to add on to that.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing she said. I mean, anything people create and has a meaning behind it is considered art, whether it's a different medium or a medium that's slightly easier to use than another medium. As long as a person has a meaning behind it and people can see their thoughts and talk about this art and what they think it means to them, it's art. Maybe someone finds digital art easier than the rest, or someone is too attached to traditional art because it's been there for a long time. I feel like whatever a person created is considered art, and it's important. I think Alia would like to add to what I'm saying.
Yes. I think this is a perfect example of today's discussion, that art and discussions, kind of really go long, they can broaden, they can expand, and so can art. Art can expand into many forms and many ways. And, when I asked Miss Madeline, or when I asked other students, digital versus traditional art, everybody said they're fine with anything, or some people said that I find this harder, or I prefer this. And that's what all art is always about. You can always have a conversation with a person. You can always agree, disagree. You could always say, I prefer this, I prefer that, because in art, there's no certain structure. There's no certain way of doing something. In math, you have to do a certain equation. In art, you don't have to do a certain equation. You have to do you have to do whatever you feel like. And I feel that what Judy says, and what other people say, that traditional art is good, traditional art is bad, it's all personal opinions. And all of us respect that in during this majlis. This is what it's all about. It's about understanding and sharing each other's agreements, disagreements, and seeing other people's views. I'd just like to point to Anastasia, I'm so sorry if I say it wrong, and Mira, who wanted to add on. So Anastasia, if you could come on.
Yeah, sure. So just to talk about what is digital for us. So anything that's digital, that's technology, is an invention. And if I think about the importance of invention, without the invention of paint tube, how would impressionists invent their in plain air, so drawing in the outside? How would Andy Warhol become so skillful at his silk printing techniques? There is no way that we would move forward without our inventions. And art, digitalized world, and 3D animation, any form of it is a form of invention that would lead us into the future, the brighter future that we all seek about. And I wanted to pass this on to Leah, who would introduce us to different forms of art that could be digitalized and that could be seen as art still in this form. Either it is traditional or digital. Leah, if you could come on.
I would like to say that about the different forms of art, as like most people view art as simply as painting or a drawing. However, there is like different major types, such as performing arts, culinary arts, visual or decorative. And I feel like people create art to show them, to show others something about them, something to show in a unique way like nobody does, and something that only a particular person can illustrate in their own way, either it's for paper, music, dance, or a poem. So what do you guys think about it?
Miss Madeline, you wanna add on a question? You can.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you all a question that's kind of within this conversation as well. So do you think if you're looking through history, do you think that there was only one method or one technique of representing art? So just a yes or no for now. So because I want to take it further and I'm curious. No,
No,
exactly.
there was.
In each
Definitely not.
period, yeah, exactly, definitely not. Each period adapts to what is around it and also uses that to create art. So in the 20th century, end of the 19th century. So when you have the invention of painting tubes, for example, they didn't have paint tubes. They used to paint inside the house. And then you have the invention of painting tubes. So they started to take their canvases and they started to take their tools and paint outside. And then later on you had film. Film is also a form of art, no? So you started to have the invention of film and they started to take a lot of inspiration from film. So what I'm trying to say is you adapt the technique, so what we call the technique in which you create art, whether it is through painting, sculpting, or performance art, or whatever it is. So it is your way of expression. It could be through various methods and various materials and various ways that no one is, I would say at this point in time, no one is higher than other. There is no such thing as this is a more valuable piece of work than that piece of work, just like you were all saying exactly. So it really just depends on how well executed it is, the thought behind it, the concept, the work that you've put in. And digital art could be just as great. I mean, when we're talking about video games, okay, have you seen how amazing some of them are and how great they are? I mean, video games is a form of art too. I mean, the way that it's evolved, the way that you have all of these great techniques. When you're looking at The Last of Us, they look exactly like they are, real human beings, for example. So this is a great form of art in itself, and it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of skill as well. So I would say that there is no greater form of art than other. That was a very, very old traditional concept. So that's why I said we broke free from what is considered traditional art from around the 18th century. Was started to break away even after the French Revolution from what was considered traditional art, which is painting, sculptures, and in a specific way, you only paint this, and that. You started all artists started to experiment in many different ways, and depending on what they have around them, So if they had technology back then that we had, they would have probably incorporated that into their artworks as well. Andy Warhol, when you're talking about Andy Warhol had factories that would produce the artwork. So he wasn't necessarily producing everything himself, right? So he had machines that would produce it. So he wasn't technically doing it by hand. So there were machines that were producing. That's an argument of like, was Andy Warhol an artist or was he not? Because technically he had workers and he had, there's a lot of debate that goes even deeper than that. But, they all adapt to the technology that they have at the time. And had they had the technology that we have now, they would have definitely incorporated that into their art as well. So that's why I think, it could definitely be considered art nowadays. Nothing is not considered art, nothing, really nothing. As long as you have thought behind it, as long as there's effort, just like you were saying, it is art, really. So I want to ask the question actually is, the question is, do you yourself prefer one method to another? That's something personal. All right. So for example, do you prefer to go more towards the digital direction, or do you prefer more to go through a traditional direction? That's really up to you now, but that's not so much to say as one requires more skill than the other, or one is in a higher platform than another. So it's interesting to see you debate. That's why I was like watching you guys, because it was interesting to see debate, if you think that one was in a higher standard than another. And you'd still find a lot of individuals that would tell you, oh, but that's not paintings like before when they used to paint this and that. But you'd say, yeah, but I mean, here there is a thought that wasn't there before. That talks about mathematics, that talks about physics, that talks about this and that talks about philosophy that wasn't there before. So even if this looks simpler, the thought might be more complex. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's not so much about also how well a painting is made. Sometimes it's the thought behind it that's a lot more complex, you know what I mean, than the painting itself. So there's so many different layers sometimes to consider. So I just wanted to kind of see if you agree with this opinion, or if you had more to add on to that, or if you'd like to move on to another question as well, feel free to do so. I just felt like maybe I should add on to that. Yes, please.
Yes, Miss, I agree to what you've said for that for your question as well. So I would like to add on another question. Can art connect us to strangers, and how? As per me, I'll give one answer, which yes, art can connect us to strangers. Like art connects people you don't know together physically at galleries, museum, and etc. So would anyone else like to add up and answer this question?
Can I answer too?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I do think that art can connect to complete and total strangers. As usually when we meet our friends and when we get to know people, it's because of similar passions and similar interests. And art is one passion and interest that can connect two people to with a very and make them understand each other very deeply, as art can do that. And yeah, this is why I think art is one of the biggest ways to random strangers can meet and become the best of friends for the rest of their lives.
Can I add on? Okay, I'll add on then. This was in our history textbook, I believe. There were several symbols that were used during the French Revolution to communicate with the general public because most of them were not educated. So that's a very clear example of how you can use something as simple as a cap or a flag to communicate such powerful messages that literally led to a revolution that changed the country for like ever. So yeah, it's kind of obvious that you can use art to connect to strangers. You can use art to spread a message that is powerful enough to bring about a revolution. So yeah.
I completely agree with that. I feel like us talking right now is also art connecting strangers to each other. With us having a discussion through like Mahati said, through galleries, through everything you do. It's like something you feel so strongly about, another stranger on the end of the world, the other end of the world, can feel the same way about something, and that connection. Definitely, like Abhinanda said, that connection is very strong, and these two people can definitely be the best of friends. Sandhya, you wanted to go ahead?
Yeah, I'd like to give yeah, I just like to speak about how art connects people. One of my best friends, like we became friends because we enjoyed the same type of music. Like I had never spoken to her before, but we found out that we enjoyed the same type of music, and like that became a topic of discussion, and that's how we connected. So I think that's a great example. And I'd also like to talk about how the meaning behind the artwork could be so much more complex and could have such a deep meaning. I had created an artwork using my hair. So I have really curly hair, and that's something that really I used to like shy away from it. I used to not really like it, and then I started embracing it, and like I used those feelings and emotions, and it was a simple self-portrait of me that I made using my hair, and I think that's an example of how this piece may look so simple. It's just a single line drawing with my hair, but the meaning behind it, the emotion behind it's much deeper, and I think that's the beauty of art, like how such a simple thing could go much deeper. And I think that also connects people because so many people have this struggle with curly hair, and I could connect with people who have I could connect with people who have these similar feelings and emotions, and it can be a topic of discussion, and again connecting with strangers like Miss Madeline.
Yeah, and throughout history of art, we've seen lots of people coming together, especially at times of political, social, and economical unrests. So, for example, we have this pandemic right now going on, and I've seen lots and lots of artists communicating, connecting during the quarantine. They may Zoom together, quarantine together, but the main purpose of all of them is to share this remote emotion of relief, to give the audience help them find hope in the hopeless of the world around us. So art is our hope, and the world around us is something that's maybe more hopeless, but no matter what, we come together and we fight through that, together as artists, as a community, and as an industry as a whole. Parvati, if you want to add on to that, I'd be happy to hear your opinion.
Actually, I have a question. So, for like I think the past few hours, we have been talking about many different arts. So I would like to know what type of arts do you all prefer to do to express yourself?
I like doing social. So I said I'm really interested in social issues, and I like doing. So I watch a lot of dramas, and I listen to a lot of music that has a lot of meaning to it. And my way of de-stressing is I take my favorite artists and their songs. I take out their song and I take out a lyrics that really touches me, and I take that lyrics out, and then I'm like, how can I show this visually? How can I express this visually? Because that song, that lyric that I've picked has an emotional connection to me, and if I can put it out there in the visual world for people, for people who are deaf, people who can't, listen to music, but they can see and they can feel through my painting. I think that's why all my inspiration comes from music. Everything, all my inspiration comes from other forms of art. People say that I want to draw people. That's a form of movement, a form of portraiture, and like as Miss Madeline said, that many people throughout history have had different influences into their art. So you always, there's the fun thing about art is there's a lot to take from it. It's not straightforward. You're not restricted to one topic. There's a lot of history behind each and every person and the art that they give. And I want to ask Miss Madeline if she really agrees on this, and if she's seen any examples that, and if she wants to add on anything further.
Yes, of course. I think that there are so many different ways. I love the fact that you said that you incorporate. I mean, you guys are so creative. Some of you who have expressed earlier on using, your hair and curly hair. And that is actually a very sensitive topic, because especially in the Middle East, for a very long time, there has been like a bad stigma that's related to curly hair. And I know that a lot of you ladies have been through it, and maybe gentlemen too. Having curly hair myself, a lot of times you face a lot of questions like, why don't you straighten your hair? Wouldn't it look better? Why don't you? But you grow and you start to embrace it, and you're like, you know what? This is who I am. Curly hair is amazing. I love it. And I love the fact that you've incorporated that into your own paintings and into your own artwork. I don't know how exactly you've incorporated that, but that's something very interesting. And that's just to show you how you use art to change a perspective sometimes. And art is, art can communicate to so many different people in so many different ways, and it is definitely a form of communication. You change perspectives through the smallest things that you do, whether it is, just as you said earlier as well, you take a lyric from a song and you try to incorporate it to a different audience, the deaf who can't really hear it, those who are not able to relate to art in a certain way can now relate to it in a different way. And it's the same thing, you had a feeling about that word and you wanted to share that feeling through a painting. And so it's very interesting to see that you're talking about many different techniques in order for you to express the emotion and to express the feeling. And definitely, art can communicate to a lot of people in many different ways and many different methods, and it can change perspectives. That's what's very important. You have the power through art to change perspective. And I wanted to ask you also something. When we went into quarantine, when everyone was stuck inside of their homes, that's something very interesting for us to think about, when they tell you art is not important, or art isn't a career that is very serious. What do you think a lot of people were doing when they were sitting at home and they couldn't go out and they wanted to have fun or they wanted to do something creative? What were they doing? A lot of people. Ilya, yeah, you can join in.
Something I think was really popular during the quarantine period was baking, and I see that as a form of art, the culinary arts. It was something that everyone started doing, everyone started getting into baking, and it just shows how art connects us through anything. There are people that were, for example, when I went into quarantine, I started trying to do digital art because I'm so bad at digital art, so I wanted to improve it. So I started doing that because I had more free time. I also tried to improve my fine art skills, and they really developed over the quarantine period. I know some of my friends were experimenting with sculptures and clay. So I just know that like every person did a form of art and tried to get out their frustration somehow. And I think that that's what makes art so beautiful, is that you can take your frustrations and your feelings and then just and create something beautiful out of it. And that piece that you create can communicate so many messages to so many different people. The way people interpret it, I think, is amazing because it's the way that art connects us all. I might interpret something as one thing and someone else might interpret it as another thing. It's all our past experiences that shape the way we interpret things. And it just reflects our personality and everything through the way that we communicate our work.
Yeah.
Would Sandhya like to add?
Yeah, I'd also like to add that, like I mentioned before, during this pandemic and the quarantine period, the app TikTok rose like to so much popularity. Like everyone was using it. It was a creative output for everyone. It was just a way to release stress for some people. People were, there was the Dangora coffee. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but people were sharing recipes and easy things to make online. And yeah, I think it just brought everyone together because this was something that was you couldn't really escape, and we just had to be with each other in some way or the other. So yeah, I think that was also again art, which was something that everyone turned back to.
Okay, so I agree with Ilya and Sandy. So during quarantine, we weren't allowed to go outside our house, and I was very bored. So I got into baking, and I feel like it's a type of art. So that is why I like to bake, and it's only because of quarantine. And so I feel like just because of quarantine, we have discovered many things. First thing, the app TikTok has gone viral, and as Sandia said, people are sharing their art. It's either paintings on canvases or random paintings that they feel like it has feelings, and it actually does when you look into it. Other people got into baking, they were sharing recipes. So I think Jackson and Josh have different ideas. I'd like to go ahead, Jackson.
Oh yeah, sure. So during this quarantine time, I started making food like traditional Kerala type of foods. I made a lot of curry, like fish curry, like all vegetable kind of dishes. Every day I try to make. My mom also tried to force me, like not always look on full time on laptops and devices, and she pulls me out. She tells make some food for us, and plus she had broken her hand as well during the pandemic time. So for whole 1 month, I should make food every time, like make coffee, then make milk, then drink, then make her drink some milk, then all like kubus and hummus and all those chicken fry and everything I should make every time. Plus, I started beatboxing also. Like I listened to some songs and started beatboxing recently also. Yeah, and then I would like to tell my theory of art. If the world in the world, if there was no art, then what would happen? So I found a theory behind that. So it's like, yeah. So if without art, there will be no design, and then there will be no buildings, no architecture, and without this architecture, there will be no more creativity, and without creativity, there will be no individuality, and without individuality, there will be no human beings. So what I mean that if there was no art in the world, then human beings as whole we won't exist in the world. So they are directly proportional. So if art is there, then human beings should be there. So they are interlinked to each other.
Yeah, I completely agree with the theory which Jackson told that you can say in a way that art and mankind are synonymous. They both go along together, and without one, another can't exist. And yeah, coming on to what I did during the pandemic, during the pandemic, like since most of us were locked in our houses, so even I tried learning cooking for a bit, but emphasis on the try because I didn't, really get it. Because next year onwards, we'll be going to the university phase, and living in hostel is kind of tough. So you need to learn a few recipes of your own from home. So I tried that, just tried, nothing else. Yeah, it's the effort that counts. And the other part was, since we couldn't meet our friends, there's always Zoom, which we could depend on. We used to do Zoom and play games like Among Us was really popular back at the time, and Ludo King, that also was a bit of a thing. Yeah, so that's what I practically did. And yeah, that's it.
Sania, would you like to speak about the art of cooking?
Yes, I would like to answer the question that what would happen if the world is without art. We will all be in a blank state because there will be no feelings, there will be no joy, there will be no creativity. Because why art is important to me, because it helped me to discover who I am without I even recognized. So it is very difficult, and it allows self-explanation and self-awareness also, especially. And then I will just be speechless.
I also want to add to whoever talked about people posting art on TikTok. Because of quarantine and before quarantine a bit, I feel like the app was very popular and trending, and I feel like the people there who share their talents, whether that can be dancing, even posting cooking tutorials, and the aspect of art, I feel like the people who started posting art on there gained popularity, and I feel like that also helped spread art and like motivation for people to draw, because I know many artists face a thing called art block where you have no motivation to draw and always feel like every drawing you're gonna do is you're unsatisfied with what you do. I feel like seeing other artists draw and sharing their work with positive feedback also pushes other artists to work towards drawing more and trying to improve of themselves. So I feel like also spreading art through social platforms is really important and helps other people. I'd like to pass it on to Dia.
Yes. During the quarantine, I'd like to admit that I went through a major art block during the first half of it. I couldn't really get inspired by anything, but with social media, I was able to look at other people's artwork and find other interests to get into. And because I could see other people's artwork and get inspired by it, it led me to get into art again and to make my own. I feel like social media helps artists get more exposure. It shares ideas and designs and ideologies that you could relate to and you could find a safe space in. And I feel like this is an integral part of art in this generation. I'd like to pass on to Behnaz.
Behnaz is not here. Maybe she's having a bit of internet issues. Artie, would you like to go?
Yeah. So as everybody's mentioned, including TikTok, one is when you're just when everybody's also mentioned during quarantine, and when Ms. Madeline also mentioned about how everybody always resorted to art, I just want to say that along with just art itself for everybody else, I also want to say that we also started because I had so much more time in quarantine, I started, well, I like reading a lot and I really like reading comics. So I started getting into a lot more comics that I would find online, and I would just read and read and read. And because of that, I actually started feeling like I wanted to make my own comics and things like that. So that's also another thing. It just because of that one free time we had so much, there was such a big boom in art and people wanting, because there was nothing else that we had. So I started just making whatever I wanted, and I just started consuming whatever content I could find. And I think that's one really good thing that happened because of art. Anytime I see somebody else make content that really makes me happy, I myself get energized. So I mean, this could be for just like anything that you love. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to mention. Would if Benaz is there, she can go next, or
Bihnaz said her friend said she's feeling a bit sick, so she won't be able to finish the rest of the meeting.
Anastasia wants to summarize and
Okay.
kind of, you know, give
Anastasia,
her final thoughts. So please
can
go
go.
ahead, Anastasia.
Yes, so to summarize this Majlis, I would say that art is something that connects all of us through breaking these barriers and restrictions that we put on ourselves. Art is something that makes this world brighter and more hopeful. And I believe that we as an art community should work on informing our fellow colleagues on what art is all about, on all of the aspects of it, discriminations, problems, and different aspects of it. And I believe that if we come together, if we communicate through art, we will be humanity as we are for a long, long period of time. And technology will only innovate our industry and not ever ruin it.
Miss Madeline, would you like to end off today's virtual Majlis?
I would just like to say, first and foremost, that I'm so thankful that you all asked me to join in today. I'm so sorry about my voice if it's not very clear, but I'm very proud, honestly. I'm very proud to see that, you know, this is the new generation, that you are all our new generation, and you know, that you're so aware and that you're so open-minded and that you're so well educated and articulated and that you're open and well read. And please continue on that path, because we have so much hope in you and in continuing on what we hope to, you know, give you from also like a little bit of our past experiences, because I also believe that you're also blessed with a lot more than we were when, you know, with technology and with the social media and everything that can aid you and that can help you, you know, connect to so many different cultures and so many people around the world and gain a lot of different perspectives that maybe we weren't able to gain at our time. But mashallah, you're all amazing, and I'm pretty sure that I will be seeing amazing things in the future from you all, and I am so excited to see that. And please do send me, Ms. Khulud has my email, and if you have artworks, please do send it to me, and I would love to have a look at them. And me and Ms. Khulud have been also working on having some time to also discuss some of the artworks that you create and what the influences behind it. And of course, technology, just like you were saying earlier, is not there to hinder our creativity. It could always be, you know, everything in life can be used in a good way or in a bad way. And it depends on how you use it and how you interpret it and how you know, create from it. So definitely technology, you can use it in great ways with art, with communication, with language, with a lot of different things, you know. So I just want to say that you all had amazing, amazing and brilliant point of views. You're such brilliant minds, and you should be very proud of yourselves and continue onto the path that you have, and have confidence in who you are and what you're creating and your views. And if you ever have any doubts, if you've ever like to discuss anything, my email is there. You can always feel free to text me, send me an email. I mean, my phone number is in my email as well. So if you have any doubts or any questions, I'm always here, and I would love for you to also come visit us at the center, and you can see, especially the current exhibition, I think you'd be interested in it because it talks a lot about age of you, so technology and how it has affected all of us. So thank you so much. You're all very brilliant. That's kind of what I wanted to wrap up everything with. Thank you, Ms. Khulud. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Miss Madeline. So I just want to say the final things I wanted to say. So basically, this is the first time we've extended the time for 2 hours. So the virtual Majlis is normally 1.5 hours, but we extended it to 2 hours because today we're talking about a rich topic, which is connecting people through art. And I would love to thank Miss Madeline for participating in this virtual majlis, although you're going through rough times, and we just all want to thank you. And I want to also thank the participants for participating in this virtual majlis. Bye bye.